Welcome to Capitol Preview, a weekly bipartisan discussion with Iowa legislators about the key issues facing our state. Brought to you by Mediacom.
Good morning. My name is Bill Prichard. I'm the Executive Vice President of the Iowa Cable and Telecommunications Association. Welcome to another edition of Capitol Preview, a show brought to you by Mediacom that discuss the issues of Iowans on Capitol Hill. This morning, our guest is Todd Prichard, Democratic Minority Leader for the Iowa House, District 52. He serves Charles City and New Hampton, among other cities. So welcome.
Yeah, thanks.
It's good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
These kind of interviews are just conversational. So
Sure.
I kind of want to just ask you, some questions about what's going on with you in your role as minority leader up there in the Iowa House.
Sure.
And what are your top priorities, Todd, for this session?
Really, I think our top priorities really deal with three things. They deal with growing the economy, making sure that Iowans have access to good, high-paying jobs that support a middle-class lifestyle, that they can see themselves advance throughout their career. And then I think healthcare and then education. Healthcare particularly has been an issue across the state, particularly in rural districts like mine, with the Medicaid privatization. We're not seeing support for the healthcare system that we should have, as far as providers being able to provide the services in not just urban areas but rural areas as well. That has been a real issue. And then funding the education system in Iowa. We used to lead the nation, and we're not there anymore. And so we think that we can do much better in terms of prioritizing education funding. And that's really an investment in the future, in the workers of tomorrow, and building the economy of tomorrow.
So has it been because of budget cuts that you guys aren't top of the nation anymore for funding schools? Or
part of this is there's been some funding issues over the last few years, but really in my mind it's a budget priority issue. Show me your budget and then I'll show you your priorities. And when education funding it's not set timely. So we still haven't set the funding level for this upcoming school year, and schools need that information to build their budgets. But we have not kept, even with inflation, we're not pacing and providing enough additional funding year in, year out to keep schools where they need to be with things like inflation, so they can keep up with technology, they can keep up with their curriculum. And so, we can talk about a commitment to education, but it just doesn't really prove that it's there.
It's an ongoing thing. It's every session. This is the discussion.
Right. So, yeah. It's an annual fight.
Yeah.
But it's something that we view as it's just critical.
Yeah,
it's absolutely critical.
Yep. Todd, what's your plans to revitalize rural Iowa? I came from rural Nebraska, so
Sure.
I kind of understand your plight a little bit, but I'd like to hear what some of your plans are.
So my district is a very rural district.
Yeah.
The largest town is Charles City. That's about 8,000 people. Then I have a host of other small towns, and we're a farming and ag-based economy. But what I'm seeing in my district, and I think across the state, and probably even true in Nebraska, is that we're losing services in rural communities. You're having to drive for your doctor. You're having to drive further and further. You're having to maybe drive to go shopping. We just lost our Kmart. We really don't have much of a retail presence. A lot of towns don't have grocery stores anymore. And so what we want to do is we want to invest in these rural communities. And I think the real driver of a rural community is small business. And so we're looking at things and talking about things that help small businesses start in rural communities so they can get their start. I own a small business in Charles City, and I think that's where our real growth is going to come from, is this entrepreneurial spirit that we can foster, and we can assist people to provide retail opportunities, provide tourism opportunities, to services in manufacturing in rural Iowa. Keeping jobs in rural Iowa, I think, is really the key.
What are you hearing from your constituents about local health care providers?
As I said earlier, healthcare's been a real challenge. my hospital, so I have two hospitals in my district. There's a small hospital in Charles City and a critical access hospital in Charles City and one in New Hampton. And since the privatization, they've seen really a funding cut in that they're not getting reimbursed for the services that they're providing for the patients that they're seeing, particularly Medicaid patients. And so in Charles City, that's been a cut of about $700,000 a year. Mm-hmm. And so what we've had to do is, one, the New Hampton Hospital is no longer, in a few months, they're no longer going to provide maternity services. And so we're creating kind of a healthcare desert. In Charles City, we've had to pass a referendum to assess property taxes higher to support the local hospital. And so when the state isn't a good partner, when the state isn't funding the healthcare system and doing its job and fulfilling its role in the healthcare system, it's a burden shift. It's a burden shift to local property tax owners. It's a burden shift to local communities. And it kind of contributes to this rural issue of losing services in rural Iowa. And it's having a negative impact.
Yeah. I would not want to be in your shoes. It's tough. I mean,
yeah.
Rural Iowa is tough for healthcare and jobs and all that stuff.
Well, and then when you see these things, if say for instance we lost a hospital,
yeah.
right, because we didn't have the funding anymore for a hospital. Okay, so then that community now is telling its population, you've got to drive 35, 45 minutes to Waterloo or to Mason City, which is nearby, mm-hmm. for your services. Well, I think that becomes a quality of life issue and
absolutely
hurts the community as well.
Well, good luck to you.
Yeah.
What should lawmakers work on this session to create more jobs, which is kind of the chicken and the egg thing of what we're talking about,
yeah.
right? So.
Well, I think, the focus needs to be, in my mind, on small business, on Iowa companies. We've seen over the last few years, we've seen a lot of effort to bring companies from out of state who bring really, in my mind, low-paying jobs. And so what we need to focus on is growing Iowa companies, having a state that has a business climate that encourages and fosters entrepreneurship and allows them to pay, decent wages. And, in my mind, it's much easier to grow jobs from companies that are already here. And I would like to see us invest more and to be a better partner from the state with local businesses already situated in the state. Mm-hmm. And so that's something I think we need to focus on.
Absolutely. What can lawmakers do to help Iowa families with the high cost of childcare?
Sure.
I know this is a critical one. I mean,
yeah.
I've had kids and they've been in childcare, when they were young too, and
yeah.
it's expensive. I mean, yeah.
Well, you look, I think the median wage in a lot of counties in Iowa, like my district, is like $14, maybe $15 an hour.
Yeah.
And if you have a couple of children or 2 or 3 children in daycare, then you're asking yourself, is it really worth, me basically working for daycare, right?
Right.
And so we've got some, there's bipartisan discussion this year finally, I think, which is encouraging to me, is that this has been an issue on the Republican side too. I feel we've been talking about it for years, but I think there are things that we can do by increasing the tax credits and making the cost, by incentivizing and bringing the cost down for working families so that they can afford childcare. One thing in my district is we're talking about, we've got legislation for a grant program for daycares, for child care centers. We have a community child care center in Charles City that I think would benefit if we had a grant program so it could expand its services and improve its facility. And I think a lot of rural child care centers are in that type of situation. So we're looking at a grant program for those types of organizations to access state funding. But the other thing the Republicans have talked about, and we agree as the Democratic Party, is eliminating this cliff where you kind of lose your benefits in terms of state credits and things like the tax credits and things like that, the support for child care. So we'd like to see that expanded to take away that cliff so people don't have to turn down a promotion or a raise because they're going to lose a child care assistance, some form of child care assistance.
Sure. What ideas do you have to make schools top in the nation again. I know you and I have talked about this a little bit. It's always been a proud tradition that Iowa has led the way,
Right.
On schools.
Well, and you look at the benefits of us having led the way, and the sophistication that it's brought to our economy by making that investment. I mean, we have a very diverse economy throughout the state. You look at the insurance industry here in Charles City, the financial industry in Des Moines, but we have very sophisticated manufacturers throughout the state and a lot of advanced manufacturing. So we have, we built it and they came. We built a good workforce and good employers, have located here. We need to continue that. And so in my mind, it starts with investing at all levels of education. It starts with investing in preschool and making sure that we have high quality preschool available for children, that we have a strong, robust K through 12 that's rigorous, that prepares its students and graduates for the modern workforce. And I think it also includes investing in the community college and the Regent universities. We've seen a lot of cuts at all those levels, really. We've the University of Iowa, Iowa State, UNI, they've grown, but at the same time, they've got a lot of struggles meeting their needs. And you look at what the institutions of higher learning have brought to Iowa, not just the Regents, but the community colleges. The ability for the community colleges to respond so rapidly with job training requirements for the marketplace. That these are great investments. They return tremendously. I think the statistic I've heard is that for every $1 we invest in higher education in the state, like the Regents, gets a return of $3. And so these are things that we need to be looking at to grow and not cut. And I think this year we're in a position to perhaps grow them, and we ought to take that opportunity.
Well, Representative Prichard, you have a plate full. You've got some good things that you're working on, and we appreciate that. What else would you like to leave with the viewers this morning about? We've kind of gone through some of the key points that you're working on, but is there one thing that kind of sticks out that you want to share with the folks?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of we're kind of halfway through the session right now.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of issues that I think that really haven't been discussed that I think I'm hopeful will be front and center of the discussion as we go through the second half of this session. Probably top among those is water quality. The governor started this session with her condition of the state address, talking and making a priority for water quality. And we want to be partners in that discussion. We would love to see something happen. There is a need. There's a need to improve the water quality of the state. And when you talk about water quality, you're really talking about land management and, in my mind, sustainable agriculture, which is something that gets me excited and is important for the future of our state. So water quality is definitely something that's high on our list of what we want to see happen.
Very good. Well, we appreciate your hard work and the issues that you want to work on for Iowa.
Sure.
And we appreciate you coming in here this morning, Representative Prichard. Our guest this morning has been Todd Prichard, Minority Leader for the Iowa House, District 52. And again, we appreciate you coming in.
Always a pleasure.
And we ask our viewing audience out there to tune in to another episode of Capitol Preview.